Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of Izzy Cinema Escape on YouTube. I'm your host Izzy. For anyone who is new to the channel, you happen to hit the search button and find my channel, feel free to hit the subscribe button and spread the word about my channel to anyone else who might be interested. And those who isn't new, thank you for spreading the word. And for those who are new, thank you for finding my channel. I hope you guys have found a forever critic here. And without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the review. Today's review is based off the 1989 superhero classic directed by Tim Burton, Batman, starring Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, Kim Basinger, Michael Gough, and Pat Hingle, and Billy Dee Williams. Batman, to give you a little bit of a backstory, this film was literally one of the biggest films of 1989, and to give you a much more broader perspective of how monumentally impactful this film was in 1989, we lived in Germany, and my parents were stationed there when they were enlisted in the United States Air Force, and as a kid, Batman was literally everywhere. I'm talking about commercials, magazines, toy lines, video games, posters, you name it. I used to try to attempt, horribly mind you, would attempt to draw the Batman symbol and would put it on my chest just so I could envision myself as Batman. And I even had the toy line. I even had the Batman action figure. I even had the Joker, where if you splash his face with water, the makeup would come on. And that was one of the most impactful moments for me as a child, just to be sitting there playing with my toys and other friends of mine who had similar toys, and we just be sitting there acting out the scenes. Batman 1989 is still, to this very day, one of the most cinematically and visually impressive films of all time. It transcended. It began, when you really think about it, as far as the 80s is concerned, it really began the superhero craze at that point in time. This is before much later on, much further down the road, years later, where you have Spider-Man that was directed by Sam Raimi. Then much later on, you had the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Then not too long after that, you had the DC Extended Cinematic Universe. So for this film, without this film, I don't believe you would even have an MCU or even a DCEU. I mean, this really is one of the most influential superhero films of all time. From a cinematic standpoint, I really love how Tim Burton captured the overall gothic feel of Gotham City. There's just something visually impressive and unique about the way that this atmosphere was captured in the film. And I can remember growing up watching this film, and even much later on, how cinematically different it is compared to a Metropolis. When you think of Gotham, you think this is where the freaks are. This is where Batman, Joker, Penguin, Clayface, Man-Bat, Catwoman, Mad Hatter, the Ventriloquist. This is where your real freaks of nature, as far as superhero and villainy is concerned, compared to Metropolis, where Superman is, where you have your Lex Luthor, your Bizarro, your Metallo, your who else? I did mention Bizarro. I mean, where you have those type of upper echelon heroes and villains and it's just something. It really gives you a broader sense of how symmetrically different they are as far as presentation and storyline is concerned. Batman 1989, when Michael Keaton was casted, there was a huge backlash, and I didn't find this out too much later on when I was doing research on it. This is before the internet and social media, so you have fans who wrote letters. Now, mind you, who writes letters these days? You have emails, you have Twitter, you have your Facebook, you have your Instagram, you have your Snapchat. So anything that is, I guess, mentally and physically displeasurable to you, you simply just you have an instant form of communication to let your voice be heard. Whereas fans in the 80s, they wrote letters and mailed these letters off. Michael Keaton did an amazing job as Batman / Bruce Wayne. While he may not be as the physical embodiment of Bruce Wayne, of having these Playboy features and these chiseled athletic build, he more than made up for it by being this silent, brooding character who carried himself in such a fashion that he still to this very day is how I view Batman. He has this intimidating aura about him, this silent charisma that you simply become intimidated by him just with him staring. And he still looks impressive in the suit. The suit, by today's standard, it still does not look dated. Even though he can't turn his head, even though he is not as mobile or athletic or as agile as Batman has portrayed to be much later on in other adaptations. He still manages to look the part and become, well, in my opinion, quite synonymous as far as superheroes are concerned. Without Michael Keaton, I mean, Michael Keaton literally made the role into his own, and he is still one of the most definitive forms of Batman being adapted on the silver screen. Jack Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker. This is where the argument can be made. This is where a lot of arguments have been had. There is no proper, accurate depiction of the Joker, seeing as he doesn't really necessarily have a set origin, considering even in the Killing Joke, he stated that if he was to have a past, he would prefer for it to be multiple choice. When it comes to the Joker, you have Cesar Romero, do you have Jack Nicholson, do you have Heath Ledger, do you have Joaquin Phoenix? Each of them had their own flavor as far as character portrayal might be defined. But when it comes to Jack Nicholson's performance, as much as I love Jack Nicholson, and I love his performance as a Joker, but when I watch this film and I watch him on the screen, I feel like I'm not watching the Joker, if that makes any sense. I'm watching Jack Nicholson in clown makeup being Jack Nicholson, whereas with Heath Ledger and Joaquin Phoenix, I literally feel as though I am watching these two actors disappear into their performances, and I'm watching the Joker come to life on the big screen. And that, to me, is what's much more impressive, is the fact that I am watching an iconic villain come to life, and I'm watching the Joker on the screen. Not taking anything away from Jack Nicholson. I love Jack Nicholson. I have yet to watch any Jack Nicholson film that I have not enjoyed. Actually, I love Jack Nicholson. He is a legend amongst legends, and he's forever a legend in the Hollywood circle. But when it comes to the Joker, I don't really hold him in a high regard for that character, just because I just view it as Jack Nicholson being Jack Nicholson playing this role. Kim Basinger playing Vicky Vale is pretty much the stereotypical damsel in distress. She does a great job of what she was given, but of course all she's doing is just looking very pretty and screaming all the time. And Billy D. Williams plays Harvey Dent before Harvey Dent becomes Two-Face. Now, it would have been cool to see how he would have looked as far as the makeup is concerned had they kept him along for Harvey Dent / Two-Face, but unfortunately they didn't. So either way, that's another story for another day, and we'll never know. But from an overall perspective, as far as the film is concerned, Batman 1989 is still a classic. And plus the soundtrack that was composed by Prince, just bar none, still one of the greatest soundtracks of all time. Can't go wrong with it. A friend of my dad's, I remember he bought the vinyl for me, and I used to listen to it from time to time, and it's still a classic soundtrack. The action of Batman 1989 is still phenomenal. The atmosphere is wonderful. Just one of the more pure 1980s version of a comic book that managed to transcend time itself and managed to not only capture the general audience, but also found a way to captivate the fans of Batman who grew up reading the comics and even the cartoons throughout the years, and still the definitive form of superheroes at its purest and simplest form. Great film, highly recommended. I'm sure anyone who has watched the film will possibly agree with me. If you haven't watched the film, feel free to let me know what you have thought about it when you do get a chance to watch it. As far as my final rating is concerned for Batman 1989, I give it a 5 out of 5, 2 thumbs up. Provide a like and a comment if you want to, and please let me know what you thought about the film if you have watched it. And if you haven't, once again, get it. I do recommend it. It's very different from what we're used to as far as later on Batman depictions is concerned, because we weren't necessarily used to Batman being as lethal and brutal as he is in this film. And how he takes on thugs was very controversial at the time. It still maintains some form of controversy, but it doesn't really detract and take away from the overall greatness of what this film managed to entail and how it influenced several films much later on down the road. But either way, that's my review of Batman 1989. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Feel free to comment and provide a like if you want to. And you guys will be hearing from me again. My friends, take care, be safe, and peace out.